Well, according to my clock, it's 7 o'clock, so we can start. And so after the prayers, we'll do a meditation that was composed by John Landau, and it's among the materials for this course, and it's very beautiful. So I thought it'd be nice to do that. Okay, so while doing the prayers, if you can, if you wish, imagine the Buddha in front of you, in the space in front of you, all made of light, radiant, blissful, looking at all of us and all living beings with pure, unconditional compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom, and all excellent qualities, and being totally dedicated to helping each and every one of us to be free of suffering and to achieve happiness, all the way up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. We try to really feel the Buddha's energy. And yeah, if it's difficult to visualize, don't worry about that. Try to at least feel that the Buddha is there in front of you, radiating all these wonderful qualities, and thinking that the Buddha is the embodiment of all objects of refuge. Then we'll recite the prayer of refuge and generating bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So then, to further extend that thought of wanting to help sentient beings, we'll do the four immeasurable prayer. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then to actually become enlightened, we need to create certain causes that include accumulating merit, positive energy, and also purifying negative karma, negative energy. And the best practices for doing those are included in this 7-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. We offer the mandala, the whole universe, everything beautiful, blissful, pleasing, imagined as a pure land, offered to the Buddha and all the objects of refuge, with the wish that all living beings will be able to experience the pure land. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it, May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niratayami. Now imagine light flowing from the Buddha, filling you completely, purifying all negative energy and bringing positive energy to help your mind attain all the knowledge and qualities and realizations of the path, bringing great peace and bliss into your mind, and helping you get closer to enlightenment. Taya ta om mune mune maha mune so. Taya ta om mune mune maha mune so. Taya ta Om Mune Mune Maha Mune So. Okay, so now let's do this meditation on compassion, altruism. So start by sitting comfortably, but also try to keep your back straight as much as possible. You can think that you're like a tall, straight redwood tree, rooted in the earth, but reaching up to the sun. Stay relaxed and well grounded, but upright and alert. Then take a series of cleansing breaths. So breathe in slowly and deeply, comfortably through your nostrils. Hold it for a short time, and then gently exhale. Just keep breathing like that. And as you are breathing in, imagine that the air you're breathing in is vibrant, permeated by white light energy that's in the nature of clarity, loving kindness, and all the other qualities of enlightenment. This energy enters you deeply and permeates your entire being. And it starts to loosen or dissolve any blockages there may be in your body or mind. Any feelings of tightness or restriction, any sleepiness or confusion, any residue of anger, attachment, or other delusions. Imagine them dissolved by this radiant white light energy that you're breathing in. And imagine those interferences, that negative energy, taking the form of dark fog or smoke, and breathe it out. Imagine it goes out of you with the out breath, And imagine that it just disappears, it just vanishes in space. So without forcing in any way, continue to breathe in the cleansing white light energy and expel the dark fog-like energy with each breath. As you continue to breathe in and out in this way, feel yourself getting lighter, as if your body was slowly transforming from a gross physical object into a spacious body of light. Allow your awareness to expand and to experience your mind's innate clarity. Now you can relax your conscious control over the breath and simply let it come and go as it will. And focus your attention instead on whatever feeling of clarity, freedom, lightness, joy, or even bliss that you may have experienced as a result of the cleansing breaths that we took. Even if there's only been a slight shift in your feelings of openness and well-being, focus your attention gently but firmly on that experience so that your mind and this experience of lightness and joy become unified, totally pervading one another. Now, imagine that you're seated at the center of a vast assemblage of beings, human beings and non-humans, millions and billions of them. And realize that the vast majority of these beings are not experiencing the open, spacious, light, joyous feeling that you just had. Instead, they're trapped in the self-created prisons of their petty, limited ego identities, running here and there looking for pleasure and happiness, but experiencing nothing but repeated frustration, disappointment, dissatisfaction, pain, and suffering. And this is because they're ignorant of the way things really are. And they're under the control of powerful and destructive emotions like hatred, attachment, jealousy, arrogance, and so on. But even that's the case, each one of these beings, without exception, has the potential to experience pure, blissful, and fully liberated minds. Each being has within him or herself this infinite treasure, this potential for full enlightenment, the nature of everlasting happiness and joy. But this treasure is unknown, buried, obscured by delusion and ignorance and karmic imprints. So they feel trapped, alienated, fragmented, and alone. So at this moment, through our great good fortune, we have the opportunity to learn about a powerful method for arousing this blissful, spacious, unencumbered, potentially enlightened consciousness within ourselves, as explained in the precious teachings on Tantra revealed by Shakyamuni Buddha. So as we listen to, study, and think about these teachings, let's expand our motivation so that we're not doing these things just for ourselves, for our own selfish purposes, wanting to get some pleasure just for ourselves. Instead, let's cultivate the pure and boundless bodhicitta motivation, wishing to use our knowledge of the tantric path to help all other beings without exception discover the treasure of their most subtle consciousness, the birthright of all living beings, and thereby experience infinite and everlasting happiness and fulfillment. In this way, the activities we engage in, listening, even thinking about one line of the Buddha's teachings, meditating on it, becomes a powerful cause for our experience of enlightenment. And we can share that with all beings throughout the universe. And so with that in mind, let's recite Om Mani Padme Hum a few times and imagine light going out for all sentient beings around us, all throughout the universe. The light of love, compassion, wisdom goes into their hearts, their minds, filling them, helping them turn their minds to the Dharma, open their minds or their hearts to the Dharma so that they too can learn these precious teachings, practice them, and attain complete freedom and full enlightenment. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme. And imagine that all that light energy you sent out to all other living beings comes back and dissolves into you like snowflakes dissolving into a lake and bringing a blissful experience beyond words and expressions. Allow that experience to completely permeate your being. Okay, so you can open your eyes. So that meditation incorporates some of the elements that are found in tantric practices, but in a much simpler form. But that way you can get a little taste of how beneficial, how beautiful Tantra is. Okay, so let's go on. If we could have the slide again. Okay, so this is our fourth class, and this is just a list of the points that I will try to cover tonight. We'll see how time goes. We'll talk about pranayama, and then two more of the classes of Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and then I'll talk about initiations. Okay, so next slide. So you've probably heard this term pranayama if you've learned yoga, if you've done yoga classes. It's used in the Hindu yoga tradition. There's different kinds of breathing practices that you can do together with the practice of yoga, like hatha yoga. So it's also used in Tantra, and there are various ways that it's used. So in all the four classes of Tantra, there are pranayama practices. So in this slide, we'll look at how it's practiced in the first three classes of Tantra. So this term pranayama can be translated as vitality exertion. And there's an explanation of those terms. So in the three lower classes of Tantra, which means Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, and Yoga Tantra, the term vitality or prana in Sanskrit refers to the wind that circulates through the doors of the senses, pores, and orifices of the body. So what that means is there's this subtle energy wind that goes in and out of our body through our senses, like our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, also our navel and orifices like our sexual organ, anus, and also the pores, so all the hair pores all over our skin, all over our body. So there's this energy wind that moves in and out of all of those openings. And so vitality refers to that. And then the other term, exertion, or ayama in Sanskrit, refers to mindfulness that is aware of distraction when our mind is diverted to other focal objects. So the practice of pranayama is done within tantric practice when you visualize yourself as a deity. So I talked about that last time, like in Kriya Tantra, for example, the practice of Avalokiteshvara. So within the sadhana, the kind of practice that you do, you generate yourself. First, you meditate on emptiness, of course, and then out of emptiness, the mind realizing emptiness arises in the form of the deity, Avalokiteshvara. And then there's various other practices you do while visualizing yourself as a deity. And this is one of the practices that's done. So while visualizing yourself as a deity, you do this practice of restraining your energy, because there's a connection between our mind and these energy winds. The energy winds are like a vehicle or a mount on which the mind moves. So when the energy winds are moving, then our mind is moving. And so when visualizing yourself as a deity, you want to have good concentration. In fact, within Tantra, that is how calm abiding is attained. You have to develop calm abiding, really, really good concentration. And the object that you use for developing calm abiding is this self-generation. They call it self-generation as the deity, the visualization of yourself as a deity. And so you need to be able to keep your mind focused on that and not wandering elsewhere. So this practice of pranayama is an aid to do that. So the third bullet point says, in Kriya, Charya, and Yoga Tantras, practitioners restrain the winds to not let them leave through the sense doors and pores. So just to give an example, in Kriya Tantra, for example, if you're doing the practice of Avalokiteshvara, after generating yourself as that deity and holding your mind on that visualization of yourself as the deity, you do this practice of pranayama. You breathe in gently and then just hold your breath, and you think that you're stopping the movements of energy wind throughout the body. And you also draw inside the usual intense movement of the mind out through the senses, like our mind is often going out of our senses, not literally, but yeah, looking at things, hearing sounds, smelling odors, and so on. So our mind is often going out through our senses to contact objects in the outer world. So we want to stop that kind of movement and just keep our mind inside of ourselves, inside of our body. So you do that while holding your breath as long as you can, comfortably, not until you're, feel like you're about to explode, but just when it starts to get uncomfortable, then you gently release the breath and relax and continue focusing on your visualization of yourself as the deity. And then you repeat this pranayama practice, this breathing practice. So it's quite simple. It's not so complicated as in Hindu yoga. It's just a simple breathing in and out and holding the breath for a short time while concentrating on the visualization of yourself as a deity. Okay, so that's one way that it's practiced in Tantra, in the 3 lower Tantras. In highest yoga Tantra, which I'll get to later, there are other ways of practicing pranayama that are more complex, more advanced. So I just wanted to let you know that this is one type of practice found within Tantra. And also, before moving on to the next class of Tantra, Charya Tantra, in the explanation of Kriya Tantra, the first class, there's also an explanation of different siddhis or feats. Sometimes they're translated as powers. So these are abilities that one can develop on the basis of doing a practice like Kriya Tantra practice, visualizing yourself as a deity, doing the other visualizations, reciting mantras, and so on. And so just a few examples of the kind of siddhis or feats that one can achieve are being able to extend your lifespan, being able to live a really long time. In fact, it said that you can extend your lifespan to 3 countless eons, which means that within that one lifetime, which is very, very, very long, you are able to accumulate the amount of merit that is needed to attain full enlightenment. Because as you've probably heard, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, he didn't practice Tantra, he was practicing the Sutra path, and he spent 3 countless eons on the path, accumulating merit and wisdom and accumulating all the causes for enlightenment. And so with Kriya Tantra, you can gain this power, this siddhi of an extended lifespan up to 3 countless great eons. That means you have that amount of time in which to accumulate the necessary merit for enlightenment. And you can still say, you're attaining enlightenment in one lifetime. It's a really long lifetime. And then other siddhis that one can achieve are clairvoyance, being able to see the minds of others and see things happening far away. And speed walking. I think Alexandra David Neal, in some of her books, talked about that. She was this French woman who went to Tibet, I don't know, in the 1800s, and observed lots of different Tibetan practitioners doing different things. So speed walking is one, of being able to walk very, very fast, faster than normal. So anyway, just to let you know that that's also part of tantric practice. But attaining these feats, these siddhis, is not for show, to show off, to impress other people, but only for one's practice and for the benefit of sentient beings. So if you did have these powers, these abilities, you could use them to benefit others. Okay, next slide this is the second of the 4 classes of Tantra, Charya Tantra, Performance Tantra. So just a little bit about that. So the main Tantra, and the word Tantra, it refers to practices that we do, like this system of getting an initiation and doing practices and so on. But it also refers to texts. So there are tantric texts that were taught by the Buddha. It's said that when the Buddha taught Tantra, he emanated in the form of Vajradhara, or maybe in other forms as well, like Kala Chakra. So taking the form of a tantric deity, then he gave the tantric teachings, and there are texts containing those teachings which have been transmitted, first in Sanskrit, then taken to Tibet, translated into Tibetan. Some are now being translated into English. So when it says here, the main Tantra is Vairochana, complete enlightenment Tantra. So this is referring to a text. And and there are 3 lineages. This is the same as in Kriya Tantra, that there's the Tathagata lineage, the Lotus lineage, and the Vajra lineage. So within these 3 lineages, there are various, deities and tantric practices. This Vairochana complete enlightenment Tantra belongs to the Tathagata lineage. And it was translated into Tibetan, but also translated into Chinese, and was practiced in China. I don't know if it's still practiced in China, but it also traveled from China to Japan in the, let's see what century that was. I think it was the 9th century. And it's still practiced now in Japan. There's this one school of Japanese Buddhism called Shingon. And this was started by a Japanese monk named Kukai in the 9th century. So he went to China and studied and learned the tantric teachings, the esoteric teachings in China, and then brought them back to Japan and started this school, Shingon. I'm not sure if I know how to say it. And it's still alive today. It's still being practiced today. And the main practice of that particular Japanese school is this one. They refer to it as Mahavairochana. So I think that it belongs to this class of Tantra, Charya Tantra. And the word Shingon is the Japanese rendering of the Chinese term for mantra, which is Shenyan. Shenyan. Okay, so Shingon means mantra. It's just like Zen Buddhism, which is very famous, originated in China as Chan Buddhism. And then it was later brought to Japan, and they use the term Zen, which I guess is the closest they could have to Chan. And yeah, so Buddhism, the Buddhist teachings went from India into China, sometimes through the Silk Route, but also in other ways. For example, Tibet, there was quite a bit of movement and travel between Tibetans and Chinese. So some Tibetans went to China and studied, some Chinese people went to Tibet and studied. So that was another way in which tantric teachings, esoteric teachings, traveled from Tibet into China. And it's still popular. It's still, There's lots of different schools of Buddhism in both China and Japan, but among them is Tantra, some forms of Tantra. Okay, so anyway, a little bit of an aside. So then the third bullet point says you take bodhisattva vows and commitments at the time of receiving an initiation, and you should keep these well. So some of the bodhisattva vows we're familiar with. We take those even without practicing Tantra. But when taking a tantric initiation, there are also certain commitments. So, for example, in Charya Tantra, the commitments that you take when receiving an initiation, and this is explained in the Vajrayana Complete Enlightenment Tantra, you must not give up the pure Dharma and bodhicitta, even to save your life. You must not act with avarice or harm sentient beings, and you must maintain the practice of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. So those are commitments that you make when receiving an initiation into this class of Tantra. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, it's also essential to maintain the correct view of emptiness and bodhicitta, not losing them even for the sake of your life, and that these are the root of all the vows and pledges. And then as for the practice, it's similar to Kriya Tantra. There are these two levels of practice, yoga with signs and yoga without signs. So yoga with signs is practice to attain the Rupakaya, form bodies of a Buddha. And the word signs, again, refers to conventional truths. So in this type of practice, you're focused more on things that are, conventional truths, such as the visualization of the deity and the recitation of the mantra. And so, yeah, Charya Tantra is very similar to Kriya Tantra. You meditate on emptiness, then arise from emptiness in the form of a deity. And then you also visualize a deity outside of you, in front of you. You do various visualizations related to that deity in front of you, like visualizing a moon disk at their heart, and the mantra on the moon disk, and then reciting the mantra. And those kinds of practices are known as external yoga with signs, because you're focusing more on the deity outside of yourself, the front, so-called front generation deity. But in Charya Tantra, there's also an internal form of yoga with signs, and this isn't found in Kriya Tantra. And so the internal yoga with signs involves visualizing yourself as a deity, and then within your heart is another small deity, and then in the heart of that deity there's a moon disk. It represents your mind. You imagine your mind in the form of a moon disk with the mantra standing on top of it, going around the top, around the edge. And the letters of the mantra are emitting sound, making the sound of the letters. So that's the object that you use to develop calm abiding. You focus on that. So because it's focused more on something inside of yourself, it's called internal. And while doing these practices, you also do the pranayama practice of holding the breath, restraining the winds from going in and out of your pores and orifices and so on. And then yoga without signs is similar. So there, the main focus is on emptiness, the meaning of signs. You're not paying so much attention to conventional truths like the deity and the mantra and so on. Although you do still, it said that when you're practicing yoga without signs, you're still doing that within visualizing yourself as the deity, with different aspects of the deity and mantra and so on. But that's not your main focus. Your main focus is on emptiness, the emptiness of all of these things. And so yoga without signs is the cause for the Dharmakaya, the wisdom mind, the omniscient mind of the Buddha. And when practicing yoga without signs, you cultivate the union of calm abiding and special insight. So you have already cultivated calm abiding. I think, if I remember correctly, you cultivate calm abiding while practicing yoga with signs. Then when you practice yoga without signs, you focus more on emptiness and you alternate an analytical meditation, which isn't, thinking about things like impermanence, but rather analyzing the visualization, analytical meditation on the visualization, and placement meditation, just focusing single pointedly. So by alternating those two types of meditation, analytical and placement, you eventually attain the union of calm abiding and special insight. So just from my notes, it says yoga without signs is yoga that is profound, meaning the mind understands emptiness. It's clear. The mind has this practice of deity yoga, visualizing oneself as the deity and the mandala and so on. And non-dual, meaning with one mind, you have one mind that is having those two aspects of realizing emptiness and having this appearance of the deity. So again, as we said last time, His Holiness said that's actually not possible until you're enlightened. But while you're on the path, while you're doing these practices, you imagine that you have one single mind that has those two aspects of emptiness as well as the visualization of the deity. So that one mind has the union of wisdom and method and wisdom together in one mind. And yoga without signs is the direct antidote to the root of samsara. That, to eliminate the root of samsara. Okay, and then also within Charya Tantra, that you can attain the various siddhis or feats. Okay, then the next slide is the third class of Tantra, which is called Yoga Tantra. And the main Tantra in this class of Tantra is called the Compendium of the Reality of All the Tathagatas. I don't know if that's been translated into English or not, but maybe one day it will be. And this text begins with an explanation of the qualities of Vairochana, so that listeners, readers, those learning this text will generate the wish to attain Vairochana. So Vairochana is one of the 5 Buddha families we'll look at those a little bit later, but yeah. And then the rest of the Tantra explains how to attain that state of Vairocana. And in Yoga Tantra, again, there are these three lineages, Tathagata, Lotus, and Vajra. Each would have different deities. And I think I mentioned this before, in my experience, within the Gelugpa tradition, most of the initiations that are given, most of the practices that are done are the first class of Tantra, Kriya Tantra, and the fourth class, highest Yoga Tantra. I've never, as far as I can remember, I've never received an initiation into Charya Tantra or Yoga Tantra. They may exist, and also maybe in other traditions, other schools, Kagyu, Nyingma, and so on, they may practice them more, but in my experience, they seem to be quite rare in the Gelugpa tradition. And then when it comes to vows and commitments, it says here with the student empowerment, that's kind of a funny term. After this, we'll look at different types of empowerments or initiations, and then this will make a little bit more sense. But with one type of empowerment in Yoga Tantra, which is called the student empowerment, you take just bodhisattva vows, but a fuller initiation involves the Vajra master empowerment. And if you receive that, then you not only take bodhisattva vows, but you also take tantric vows. Okay, so there are tantric vows, a set of tantric vows, but these are found only in Yoga Tantra and in highest Yoga Tantra, but not in the first two levels of Tantra. And as with the previous two classes of Tantra, there's, the practice is mainly in these two forms, yoga with signs and yoga without signs. And yoga with signs, again, this is mainly involves visualization of the deity and reciting mantras and so on. So yoga with signs has two types, two varieties. One is called yoga focusing on the basic deity. So that's as before, meditating on emptiness and then generating oneself as the deity and doing various practices related to that. And then the second is yoga focusing on subtle hand implements. And so this involves, while you're clearly visualizing yourself as the deity, you visualize a small vajra, this hand implement used in Tantra, at the upper opening of the central channel, which is actually in the point between the eyebrows. So that's the place where the central channel starts, and then it goes up over the top of the head. So at that point, you visualize this small vajra. Although Kirti Satyabhirmishe says it could also be a tiny deity instead. So there's various ways of practicing that. And then when the mind attains stability in this yoga, meaning you can keep your mind focused on this tiny vajra for a long period of time, you then do practices where you emanate from that one tiny vajra at your midbrow. You imagine many, many vajras going out, filling the entire universe. The whole universe gets filled with vajras. Then all of those vajras return and absorb into the one at the point between your eyebrows. Then you inhale this, inhale. Anyway, so so you do this practice of emanating and then reabsorbing. And then yoga without signs is, as before, you're mainly focusing on emptiness. So you would, you're still having the visualization of the deity, yourself as the deity, and the mantra, letters of the mantra, and so on. But you're contemplating how they do not exist inherently, they are empty of inherent existence. And you develop certainty about that. And then you alternate placement and analytical meditation within that certainty, so that you attain the union of calm abiding and special insight into emptiness. So that's just a brief overview of those two middle classes of Tantra, Charya, and Yoga. And I thought before talking about highest Yoga Tantra, the fourth class, it would be good to look at initiations. What are initiations? Because this can be a little bit complicated. So the next slide has that information. So the Tibetan term is Wang, and it's sometimes translated as initiation or empowerment, depends on who's doing the translation. And this is said to be the entrance to tantric practice, because you need to first receive an initiation or an empowerment to be able to do many of the practices in Tantra, especially visualizing yourself as a deity. So from the book Principles of Buddhist Tantra, which is Kirti Senja Rinpoche's commentary to a text on the stages and paths of Tantra, he says, the term empowerment implies granting permission to engage in certain activities. And he said it's similar to things that happen in secular life. To be able to do certain things, you need, the right qualifications. For example, to be able to fly an airplane, get into the seat of an airplane and turn it on and start flying it, you need to have taken lessons and trained and received a license. So you probably have to pass some tests and then get a license, and then you're qualified to be able to fly a plane. So in a similar way, to be able to visualize yourself as a deity and do other practices within Tantra, you need to first receive an empowerment. And he says an empowerment grants permission to practice a particular deity, and this permission is obtained during the initiation ceremony. So during, an initiation is like a ceremony, and the minds of the people present, the disciples, the recipients of the initiation, are matured by hearing the words of the initiation master as he guides students through the initiation ceremony of that deity. The ritual itself acts as the cause of maturation. So an initiation is, it's like a ceremony. And before giving an initiation, the master, usually a lama, has to do certain practices. So they actually have to go through a practice in which they generate themselves as the deity, and they bless certain objects or substances that are going to be used in the initiation. Sometimes that process is very short. Like recently, when he was in Bodh the Dalai Lama gave an initiation of Manjushri, and the preparation that he did was quite short. I didn't measure the time, but it was very, very short. Whereas some initiations, the preparation can take an hour or longer. So different initiations have different preparation times. And the second bullet point here says the master that gives the initiation has to be qualified. So not just anybody can give an initiation. Among the qualifications, the master themselves must have received that initiation, and that there's a lineage going all the way back to the Buddha, lineage of masters receiving that initiation and then passing it on to their disciples. So the master must have received the initiation in an unbroken lineage, and they must have they must have also done a retreat in that particular deity, which usually involves doing the sadhana several times a day, reciting a certain number of mantras, doing fire puja afterwards. And yeah, so they need to have gone through that before they can then give the initiation to others. And then there are also qualifications for the disciples to be suitable recipients of an initiation. They must have taken refuge, although usually taking refuge is part of the initiation right at the beginning. So I guess if someone has never taken refuge before, they could do it at the time of the initiation right at the beginning. But ideally, before taking an initiation, you have been studying and practicing, and you would have taken refuge and spent at least a couple of years living as a Buddhist, practicing Buddhism. So yeah, refuge is a prerequisite. And then secondly, having a good understanding of the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and understanding of emptiness. Good understanding and an actual kind of insight into those, not just understanding the words, but some change in your mind has taken place through learning and meditating on those three aspects. And then bodhicitta motivation. So your motivation for taking the initiation should be bodhicitta, that you want to help all sentient beings to be free of suffering and its causes, and achieve happiness and its causes. And you recognize that the practice of Tantra will enable you to quickly attain enlightenment, the full enlightenment of a Buddha. And in that way, you have the ability to help all sentient beings. Well, that's the only motivation, the only suitable motivation for receiving an initiation. Anything connected with worldly, the 8 worldly dharmas, or your ego, self-centeredness, isn't appropriate. And then next is faith in Tantra and the master. So ideally, you have a good feeling about Tantra, faith in Tantra. You recognize it as something valid, a valid system of practice. If you still have doubts about it, then yeah, it's not a good state of mind to have. So it's better to clear up doubts and try to reach a point of certainty about the validity of Tantra. And then the master. So when you take a tantric initiation, that master, the one giving the initiation, automatically becomes one of your gurus, one of your teachers. And in fact, in Tantra, with tantric masters, you need to practice seeing that person as the Buddha. And so it's important that you check carefully the teacher, make sure that they are someone who you can take as a teacher and you can, practice guru devotion, reliance on a teacher with. So I'll talk more about that later, how to choose a tantric master. And then next point is willingness to keep all the vows and commitments for life. So you need to know ahead of time what vows you're going to take, what commitments will be given, and you have to have this willingness. I'm going to do those practices. And then during the initiation itself, you need to do your best to stay awake and alert. And, at certain parts, the teacher will ask you to visualize something or generate a certain state of mind. And you need to follow that to the best of your ability, because that's the real initiation. The initiation is something happening in your mind, and it's not that the teacher is going to put something into your mind, but rather you need to pay attention and do your best to follow the visualization and generate the appropriate states of mind as described by the master. So it isn't just enough to go there and sit and fall asleep or daydream or talk with your friends. You need to have concentration as much as possible. So why is it that an initiation is said to be the entrance to Tantra? So during the initiation, process of the initiation kind of awakens our Buddha nature. So we have within us the potential for enlightenment, we call Buddha nature. And so that gets kind of, awakened, nourished, so that it can become manifest and be developed and eventually reach enlightenment. Also, purification, our body, speech, and mind are purified, cleared of obstacles to our enlightenment. And we receive permission to be able to engage in practices related to the particular deity that we are initiated into. By doing those practices, we are creating the cause to quickly make manifest our Buddha nature, bring ourselves to the state of enlightenment. Okay, the next slide, there are 3 types of initiation, and this isn't always explained. I heard this explanation from one of my teachers, Dr. Rinpoche, who's a great master, great scholar, who's been living in France. And not all initiations are the same. The first of these 3 types of initiation is called a grade initiation, Wang Chen, or sometimes it's just called a Wang initiation. And this is the type of initiation that is actually the entrance to Tantra. So if we wish to practice Tantra, we need to, first of all, receive a great initiation. And it's not always so clear when an initiation is being given or being offered in a Dharma center or whatever. It's not always clear what type of initiation it is. So it's good to make an effort to find out. So each of the 4 classes of Tantra does have some initiations which are great initiations. So for example, in Kriya Tantra, Action Tantra, there's a great initiation related to Avalokiteshvara, 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. And there's also others. Another that I've received is called Mitupa, the deity called Mitukpa. That's not very common. Not sure. Maybe also Medicine Buddha. There might be a great initiation related to Medicine Buddha. But not all deities of Kriya Tantra have a great initiation related to them. And a great initiation normally goes over 2 days. And then on the first day, it's like there's certain preparatory steps that you do. And kusha grass, pieces of kusha grass are handed out that you're supposed to take home and put under your mattress and your pillow, and then watch your dreams that night. And then you come back the next day, and there's something, part of the ritual is related to your dreams. And also a piece of red string with knots in it that you tie around your arm, which is for protection. And then the second day is the full initiation, the actual initiation. So it's normally like that. It's over 2 days. But I've also been in situations where the Lama will squeeze it all into one day. Maybe it's for convenience. People can't come back the next day or whatever. But yeah, it can be done in just one day. I remember once it was really funny. It was Lama Zopa Rinpoche was giving one of these initiations, and it was all done in one day. But we still, they still handed out the kusha grass, and he says, "Okay, now we can take a nap. We can take a nap and have a dream, and then we'll wake up and do the rest of the initiation." But we didn't really. It was just a joke. Yeah. So if you want to practice Tantra fully, visualizing yourself as a deity, you need to first receive a great initiation. And then there's many great initiations related to highest yoga Tantra. For example, Kala Chakra is a great initiation. Yamantaka, Haruka, Hivajra. Okay, so yeah, so you need to receive one of those at the beginning to be able to continue your practice. And then the second type of initiation is called Jainong in Tibetan, which means subsequent permission. And so after receiving a great initiation, which is the actual entrance to Tantra, then if you receive a subsequent permission, for example, Tara, as far as I know, oh, that's right, there is a Chidamani Tara. In Highest Yoga Tantra, Chidamani Tara. No, that's still not a complete initiation. It's not a great initiation. Yeah, so in my experience, most Tara initiations into Tara are Jainangs, not great initiations. And so that means that if you want to practice Tara, you engage in Tara practice fully, you need to first get a great initiation in another deity, then receive a Jainang of Tara. And same with Vajrayana. Vajrayana is a Jainang and not an actual great initiation. So you're only qualified to receive those if you have first received a great initiation. I don't know why it's like that. I didn't make the rules. That's how it is. Because I remember one time there was one situation, I think a Lama was giving a Vajrayana initiation. And there was this woman who really, really, really wanted to, take that initiation and do that practice. And she was told, you can only do it if you have received one of these other initiations. And she hadn't. She was really upset. Yeah, but that's how it is. Because a subsequent permission is not a complete initiation. It doesn't have all the parts to it as the Wangchen does. So that's how it is. That's the tradition. So anyway, if there are initiations that are being offered, it's good to find out, what type of initiation are they? Is it a great initiation or is it a Jainong? Because if you have never received a great initiation before, you can't actually receive a Jainong. And then the third type of initiation is called a long life initiation, or Tsewang. And this would be in certain deities that are practiced for long life, such as White Tara. That's probably one of the most popular ones, White Tara, or Amitabha, or Amitayas. And also there's one called Namgyalma, Ushnishavijaya. Those are deities that are practiced to extend life. And yeah, so I'm trying to remember, but I think there are occasions, for example, when there's a long life puja for the Dalai Lama, and this long life puja is offered, and then he will sometimes give a long life initiation along with that. And it's not really a complete initiation, it's more like a blessing, a consecration. So I think, as far as I know, there are no commitments. You don't have commitments, vows. You just, the Lama just conducts this ritual, and the people present get blessed. Yeah. So let's do a little more, and then I'll stop and see if there's some questions. Okay, now further complication is within an initiation, especially the great initiation. Within the initiation itself, there are different stages, different parts, which are also called initiations or empowerments. And so here, I hope this doesn't make it confusing, but I'll use the word empowerment for the parts of an initiation, the things that happen within an initiation. They're like different stages of an initiation. Since so far we have only talked about the first three classes of Tantra, Kriya, Charya, and Yoga. So if you're getting an initiation into one of those, then there's only the vase empowerment within the initiation. Highest Yoga Tantra has three other parts that aren't found in these first three. So I'll just talk about this for now, and later we'll look at Highest Yoga Tantra. Okay, so the vase empowerment. So again, this is part of an initiation. And that has six different parts to it, six subparts to the vase empowerment. But again, not all of these are part of every initiation. But let's just look at the six first. So, and these are related to 5 Buddhas, and often these are called 5 Dhyani Buddhas, 5 Dhyani Buddhas. But apparently that term, Dhyani Buddha, doesn't exist in Sanskrit or in Tibetan. And it originated with an English civil servant who was living in Nepal in the 1800s. He was working there, and he did learn some Sanskrit, and he, did learn some Buddhism, something about Buddhism. But he started using this term Dhyani Buddhas because in Nepal, if you've been to Nepal, all over Nepal, there are statues and stupas and holy places, and they're often decorated with these 5 Buddhas. So he, I guess, invented that term. I don't know. Nobody knows where he got it from, but he used that term, Dhyani Buddha, and then it became kind of popular in the Western world. Yeah. So lots of people talk about these 5 Dhyani Buddhas, but it's actually, the more correct term is 5 Buddha families. 5 Buddha families. So that's the term I'm going to use. So there are these 5 Buddha families, Akshobhya, Ratnasambhava, Amitabha, Amoghasiddhi, and Vairocana. And I think they're only found in Tantra. It's only in Tantra that there's this mention of these five Buddha families. And so when you're engaged in tantric practice, you often visualize these. For example, even in Avalokiteshvara, when you do Nyungne, if you've ever done the Nyungne practice, the visualization involves yourself as Avalokiteshvara inside of a mandala, beautiful mansion, and then these four other Buddhas are around you in the cardinal directions, but one of them, Amitabha, is on your crown, the crown of yourself as Avalokiteshvara. So they're often present in every, or most, if not all, mandala visualizations. So anyway, there are 6 parts of this vase empowerment. The first is called the water. And so during an initiation, there'll be a vase or vase. Tibetans call it a bumpa. It has usually made of brass, has a little spout, kind of flat on the bottom and round in the middle. And it contains saffron water. And then the Lama, the person giving the initiation, meditates on emptiness, the emptiness of the vase or the vase, and then generates it in the form of a deity, Akshobhya. And then usually it's handed out, put on people's heads so they get blessed and they get a little bit of the water to drink. And so that is to, mature the mind of the disciple. And the second is the crown initiation. So there's a crown, not like a Western king's crown, but it's usually made of cloth and it has 5 parts to it. And yeah, with some deities, you can see they have this crown going around their head with 5 parts on it. And the 5 parts represent all the 5 dhyani Buddhas. And so that the crown is generated into the deity Ratnasambhava. And then again, somebody will go on and touch the head of all the people receiving the initiation, so they get blessed with that. And then similar with the Vajra, that's related to Amitabha, the bell, Amaga Siddhi, and the name is Varochana. So that part of the initiation, you get a name that indicates which of the 5 dhyani Buddhas you're more connected with. And then the Vajra Master initiation, the 6th one. So these are all parts of an initiation. However, if the initiation is into Kriya Tantra, a Kriya Tantra initiation doesn't have all of these. It only has the first 2, the water and the crown initiation. So those are quite short. Charya Tantra initiation has the first 5. The first 5 are called knowledge empowerments. And then a Yoga Tantra initiation has all 6. So that would be longer and more complex, all 6 of those. And that's why with the 6th of these, the Vajra Master initiation, if you receive that, then you receive tantric vows. Tantric vows are taken. And you keep those. So let's just look at the next slide. It has a chart showing correlation between these 5, the first 5 of those empowerments with a Buddha, and also with an aggregate and an affliction that's purified, and then a wisdom that's actualized. So this chart is found in the back of the book Principles of Buddhist Tantra, Kirti Senja Rinpoche's book. So the first is the water empowerment, and that's connected with akshobhya. And during that part of the empowerment, the master, the one giving the initiation, will also ask you to generate yourself in the aspect form of akshobhya. And the substance, there's always a substance, so that would be a vase with water in it. And then one of the five aggregates is blessed, so that it can be transformed into the purified aggregate of a Buddha. So for the water empowerment, it's the consciousness aggregate, this fifth aggregate that is blessed. And then there's an affliction that is purified, and that's aversion or anger or hatred. So that particular affliction is purified. And then there are five wisdoms that are actualized. So for this one, it's the wisdom of the sphere of Dharma, Dharma Dhatu, wisdom of Dharma Dhatu. And then for the crown initiation, that's related to Ratnasambhava. The substance is a crown. And the aggregate that is blessed to be transformed is the aggregate of feelings. The affliction that's purified is pride, arrogance. And that leaves the imprint to attain at the time of enlightenment, the wisdom of equanimity. Then the Vajra empowerment is related to Amitabha. You generate yourself as Amitabha. The implement is a Vajra. And the aggregate that's purified is discriminations. That's the mental factor that tells one object from another. The affliction that's purified is desire, attachment, craving. And the resultant wisdom that would be attained is the wisdom of individual analysis. Then the bell empowerment is related to Amoghasiddhi. And there's a bell, that's the substance used, a bell. And the aggregate that's purified is the fourth aggregate. Sometimes it's called volition or compositional factors or miscellaneous factors. That's the aggregate that includes all the other mental factors other than feelings and discrimination. The affliction purified is jealousy, and the wisdom that will be actualized is the wisdom of accomplishing action. Then the name empowerment, the fifth one, that's related to Vairochana. And there's no substance used. The aggregate that's blessed is form aggregate, our physical form, physical body. The affliction purified is confusion, which is sometimes another term used for ignorance, not knowing the true nature of things. And the type of wisdom actualized as a result of this is the mirror-like wisdom. Okay, so there's a lot of information here, and probably much more that you can absorb. But hopefully this gives you some sense that, yeah, Tantra is something quite profound and all-encompassing, because it relates to like our five aggregates. They are getting purified so that they can transform into the aggregates of a Buddha, and our afflictions are being purified and so on. So all the different aspects of an initiation and also of the practice of Tantra are for that purpose of purifying our body, speech, and mind, and transforming those so that we can achieve the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. So I'll stop there and let you ask questions. Bob, do you have your hand up? Okay, go ahead.
Can you explain? I'm confused. Amitayus and Amitabha. They're are they two different deities?
Yeah, they are, but I think there's connection between them. So Amitayus is one of the long life deities. There's three main long life deities. Sometimes they're all depicted together on a tanka. White Tara is one, Amitayus is another, and then Ushnisha Vijaya is a female deity with, I think she has 8 arms and 3 faces. So anyway, that's as much as I know, that Amitayus is a practice that is done in order to overcome obstacles to our life so that we will be able to live long. And I think he has his hands in his lap, like in the meditation position, with a vase, a long life vase resting in his hands. That's how he's usually depicted. And then Amitabha, yeah, is one of the 5 Buddhas, and also is famous for having this pure land, Sukhavati, the land of bliss. And so that particular practice is very popular in East Asia, China, Japan, Korea. There are people who, that's like their main practice, praying to Amitabha and creating the causes to go to Amitabha's Pure Land after they die. So that's as much as I know. But yes, they are 2 different deities. I'm not really sure what the connection is between them. There is a connection. There's probably some connection, but I don't know it.
Okay, I have another question. If people don't have questions, I could keep asking questions forever. But you said that you do. I think when you're doing the meditation on the deity yoga, and you do like you maybe switch between calm abiding and analytical meditation on emptiness. Could you describe with a little detail about what you're referring to when you refer to analytical meditation on emptiness?
Well, it's been a while since I've studied this, but I think that in Tantra, because ideally, even before you start practicing Tantra, you have been learning about emptiness and have gained a realization of emptiness. That's the best case scenario. You've already got it. You've already got the realization of emptiness. So then within a tantric practice, a tantric sadhana, you meditate on emptiness and imagine ordinary things like yourself, your body, your mind, the environment, and everything. They all become empty. They all dissolve, disappear into emptiness. And then your mind that understands emptiness is what appears as the deity, the mandala, all the different aspects of the visualization. And so if I remember correctly, and I'll check and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know next week. But when they talk about analytical meditation in Tantra, it's not so much analytical like meditating on emptiness, thinking about emptiness, but rather it's doing different things with the visualization. For example, when I was talking about, I think it was Yoga Tantra, this little Vajra visualized at the center of your eyebrows, and you imagine that multiplying, and zillions of Vajras are going out, and then they reabsorb. So I think that is the kind of analytical meditation that is done in Tantra. So it's related to, yeah, doing different things with the visualization. And while you're doing all these different things with the visualization, you're supposed to be continuing to meditate on emptiness, seeing all of these things as empty of inherent existence, not letting your mind stray from that, not letting your mind see anything as being truly existing, inherently existing. So all of these things are empty of inherent existence. So you've already got that understanding down, and then you're yeah, sending out and bringing back different aspects of the visualization. So you probably, yeah, in many tantric practices, sometimes like you're visualizing yourself as a deity, and then at your heart there's a moon disk, and the mantra, around the moon disk, and then you imagine sending out light or deities from the mantra. They're going out to help sentient beings, helping them purify their karma, their delusions, helping them reach enlightenment, and then coming back. So that kind of practice is found in most, if not all, tantric sadhanas. So that's what's meant by analytical meditation. So you're alternating that kind of practice with just stabilizing meditation, where you're just focusing on the visualization or focusing on one thing, like this little tiny Vajra. That's as much as I know, because in fact, in the tantric practices that I've done, the tantric retreats I've done, I've mainly just done the visualization, recited the mantra, and didn't engage in all these other aspects of the practice. I've always seen that as a more advanced level of practice that I wasn't really capable of.
What you described, I would never consider to be analytical, because it seems to me it's just more straight visualization. So I don't see anything analytical about it, but that's just my deluded
You're right.
mind.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. It isn't our normal understanding of analytical meditation. Analytical meditation is usually like examining an object and trying to determine, is this impermanent or permanent? Is this true existent or empty of true existence? Yeah, that's our usual understanding. But I think analytical has a different meaning in Tantra. But I'll check my notes and um, yeah, let you
Tune in next week, right?
next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Venerable, I have a question, please. It's Barbara.
Okay.
I have to say I feel like a deer in the headlights. I'm like, oh my gosh. But the question that I have is, I don't understand those three lineages that you talked about, the Tathagata, Lotus, and Vajra.
Yeah.
What are those lineages of? That totally escaped me.
Well, I don't really know either. It's more like these are different families, maybe. Um, and within each of those three lineages, there are different deities. And so if you receive an initiation into one of those lineages, then you're qualified to practice that particular deity. But to me, it's more to do with the history, the background, how Tantra came to us. There's a lot of aspects of Tantra that I don't understand either, and you just hear all these terms, you learn all these things, but I haven't really heard an explanation of where did these lineages come from? What's the difference between one and another? They're just there. They're in the tantric text, and there's probably an explanation. I just haven't come across it. So don't worry about it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just the limited knowledge and experience I have of Tantra, it just seems really complex. There's just so many different deities, so many different, yeah, practices. And I often wonder myself, why does there need to be so many deities? But it could be because sentient beings, there's so many different types of sentient beings who have different mentalities, different interests, different inclinations. And so the different deities are for different types of people. And so I just accept that, and I feel kind of an affinity with some of the deities, and I like to practice those. But with others, okay, those are for other people. I don't need to know about those. I mean, if you're a lama, if you're a highly accomplished practitioner, then you would probably make yourself familiar with all these other deities so that you can then pass them on to your disciples. You may have a disciple, you can recognize that person. It would be good for them to do that particular practice, so then they can pass that on to them. But I'm not at that level, so I just do the practices that I can relate to and feel an affinity with, and I don't concern myself with the others. I leave those for other people. Okay, Wangmo. Unmute.
Yeah, okay. Hi. Thank you for these teachings. I was wondering, when doing initiations, is it usually announced like, okay, we're gonna do this one is a great initiation, or this is a Wangchen, or okay, this is a Jainong. Is it usually announced, or do people have to kind of figure it out? Like, because, well, I guess the background for my question is last year the abbot of Sarajay was doing this teaching tour, and I heard, oh, he's gonna teach about Orange Manjushri and do the empowerment. So I went, and it was a few hours. He gave some teachings that were wonderful, and then did this empowerment, and then told us to imagine ourselves as the deity, and then had us make it a commitment to do a certain number of mantras every day. So with that, how do I know if that was a Wangchen or a Jainong?
It sounds like it was probably a Jaina.
Okay.
He didn't get kusha grass.
No. Yeah, and it wasn't very
Yeah.
long.
Yeah, I mean, before I got that explanation from my teacher, Dr. Rinpoche, I think that was sometime in the early 90s. And so that was like 20 years after I had started learning from Tibetan lamas and going to initiations. And I had never heard that explanation before about different types of initiations. So it's like, I guess a lot of lamas don't really talk about it. It's not always explained. And I've noticed lately, more recently, at least sometimes there is more information given about the type of initiation it is, but not always. So I don't know the reason for that. Why? Yeah. maybe in Tibet, it just became kind of loose and not so strict and not so carefully explained. Maybe because Tibetan people, maybe that was above their heads, and the lamas were simply trying to benefit people, do something helpful to people. And if they tried to explain all these different aspects, it would have been confusing for people. I don't know. But yeah. So yeah, don't ask me why they do things the way they do. Yeah. So if, if there is a situation where an initiation is being announced, you could try to find out, ask the organizers, the people organizing that. Mm. Any other questions? Bob?
To my view, it's more important to know the commitments that go with an initiation in advance rather than wang this, wang that, because some initiations, they take lifelong commitments, and even doing, a sadhana, long or short. But to me, by my view, that's more important. So you know what you're getting into before you take the initiation.
Yeah, that I agree. It's important. But sometimes that information isn't made available. Sometimes you don't find out at the end of the initiation, that you have to do certain things. So yeah, you have to be prepared for that. But then it's also good to, have a good attitude about that, because the whole purpose of taking initiations is to become a Buddha, to help, create the causes for enlightenment, becoming fully enlightened, to help all sentient beings. And we have to accept that that requires some practice. We need to do some practice. And so reciting some mantra or doing some practice every day is helping us. It's good for us that we will create the cause to become enlightened. So that means we also need to check carefully, what is our motivation? What's our motivation for wanting to attend initiations? We just want to go and sit there and get a nice experience, and then that's it. not do anything more after that. So yeah, that's one thing to consider. Okay, so if you do have other questions, you can send them by email to the center, I think, Venerable, and then they can pass them to me, and I'll answer them next week. Okay, so we just have one more class next week. So I'll talk about highest yoga tantra, which is very complex. And I can't reveal too much, but I'll talk a little bit just to try to demystify it and give you some idea of what that is all about. Okay, so let's conclude with the dedication of merit positive energy that we have accumulated. So feel confident that we have spent our time well. We started off with a good motivation and did this really beautiful meditation. And then listening to these teachings about Tantra, even though they can sometimes feel overwhelming, so much information that we don't always understand. But still, it said that just making a connection with Tantra, even if it's just tiny, tiny bit, is something beneficial. It will enable us to meet the tantric teachings in future lives and be able to practice them and be able to use that vehicle to reach enlightenment quickly and be of benefit to all living beings. So it's been a good thing to do, and we have created merit, positive energy. So now let's conclude by sharing that merit with all other beings, all sentient beings, wishing that they will become free of their suffering and its causes, achieve happiness and its causes, especially all the virtuous states of mind like love and compassion and wisdom, and that they will, as quickly as possible, reach full enlightenment. So we're sharing our merit with all other beings for the attainment of enlightenment. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. The incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, together with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of the infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Lou, for hosting. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.